Hello, it's Rupert Peters here from the Mayfair Studio and RPMP Limited. Um, just giving you a bit of a rundown on what it's like being on the road and what we need to get straight if you want a life in that. It is a great life. I love it to pieces, and I will continue to do it until I keel over, I'm sure. I basically got into it from an early age. I was basically at school and a bass player and wanted to do my thing and basically get out there and gig. And apart from the general of choosing everybody's parents off and trying to get lifts here and there and everywhere, I got into it and I made myself more available to different bands and to playing bass. It's not, I mean, bass playing I love as well, but not as much as I do the touring and the front of house sound. So when I was about 16, 17, my parents sent me off to college to learn a different trade. They didn't believe that I could become a famous rock star or whatever you want to call it. And they said, you need to have another vocation in life. So I basically went to college, and I met a friend who was in an engineering company, and I learned how to fix fridges. Wasn't what I wanted. What I was a means to earn money, I suppose. Anyway, I'm glad I did that, because when COVID hit, obviously we were all in the music industry completely lost. We had nothing, nothing to fall back on. But I did. So it was a lesson learned, really, that to have your finger in more than just the one pie. Anyhow, well, after doing, hang on, let me just turn the heating down a bit. Yeah, hold on a second. There we go. So yeah, basically, I went into college and learned how to repair refrigeration systems and air conditioning systems, and I actually got quite interested in it. It was quite something that I didn't think I would be interested in, but I did get quite into it. And then for a few years, I worked for a couple of companies, and then decided to go out on my own as an engineer, self-employed. But I still kept my hand in music. I was always gigging pretty much 3 times a week with my band. But I loved it so much that it was something I wanted to sort of pursue, and I couldn't find out the right channel in which to do it. I would say it was not lost as such. It was just the fact that I wanted to see what I really wanted to do rather than rather than just jump into it. So anyway, I did, and I went out on the road with a couple of bands, just gigging locally. And then one day, somebody said to me, "I've got a band from America. They're coming over, and they just basically want to chaperone somebody to help them out, and get them to the gigs and from the gigs and what have you." And I thought, "Oh yeah, okay, I'll do that." I literally did it for nothing. Hired a van, a minibus at the time, and picked the band up from the airport. It was very, very nerve-wracking. Something that you don't really want to sort of say that you're a professional at, but you have to give a sort of a professional approach to it. Anyway, they were a lovely bunch of guys from New Jersey. It was a rock band, and we did a few gigs all around the UK, Wales, Scotland, and I got a real good taste for it. And I just thought, oh, this is the bee's knees. I've got to do this. So I went out, bought myself a van. This is the van I'm in now. It wasn't the one I bought. It was a long time ago, but the van I bought was a VW transporter van, sort of. So it's a quite small van. So whenever they came over, the band, they would come over twice a year. From that point, it was around about 2000. They came over, And when I started working for them, and I had this transporter van, and there were only 3 people in the van, so of course we could all go in the van, and I had a trailer on the back, and I'd cart all the gear in there, and the bit I loved was just the whole thrill of setting up stage at a venue. Most of the venues they played were not actual music venues per se. They were venues, but they were you know, just like clubs and pubs really. So of course you would sort of, the buzz I got from it was the fact that I would have this sort of blank canvas, and it would be me being involved with the creation of this show, you know, and it's just great. I absolutely loved it. Anyway, I did that for a few years, and I also kept my hand in doing the refrigeration service work because it was good money. You know, there was certainly a lot more money than music or touring at the time. So it kept me going, and I was living the dream. Anyway, then 2003, I had a nasty crash. I was a passenger in a car, and I was lying in hospital, and I said to myself, right, that's it. I'm not going to be a fridge engineer anymore. I'm not going to be an air conditioning engineer anymore. I want to go out touring. I want to be a tour tech. And I made up the name there and then, tour tech. That's what you're going to do. And so basically, I came out of hospital, fixed myself and everything, and I said to all my refrigeration customers, that's it. I'm done. I'm going to go and do what I love doing. Life's too short. And I got a van, which is the van I'm in now, and so it's quite an old van. It's done a lot of miles. Always been trusty, and I went and put myself out there, as it were. And I learned every day, every tour is a learning curve, purely because you don't, you know, you're approached with different things every day on the road. I'm just looking to see if there are any curs. Oh no questions yet. If you want to ask me a question, please do, because I have got my questions here up on the right hand side, but all this computer technology is getting the best of me, I think. Anyway, so anyway, I went out on the road and with this band, and they spoke with other bands in the States, and they all got together and they said, oh, you to get Rupert Peters to do your touring, blah, blah, blah. So I managed to sort of start building this sort of customer base, if you like, which they were, and they all are still. They're still with me, and they still, you know, they love what I do. But I certainly feel that the way that I've sort of achieved it on the road and being able to carry on doing it is because I'm not just, as I always remind them every single time, if any of them are watching, that I'm more than just a driver, you know what I mean? So you tend to be more of a babysitter, you know, counsellor, you know, parent, and, you know, police guard, if you like. You have to make sure everything happens really smoothly, and then the shows are good, and everybody goes home happy, or everybody goes back to the hotel happy. Which then brings me on to the whole learning curve of the tour book, the Bible, we call it, where you can get managements from bands that have a tour book already constructed for you, or you have or you have to do it yourself. Usually, it's done for you. So you have the tour book gets sent to me, and I have to sort out the route, but to get us to it, and what the stage sets have to be, and how they need to be set up by what time, what the hotels are, what the eating and everybody's dietary requirements, etc., etc. And that's in the tour book. Now, I did a course. I did a lecture at the West London University earlier on in the year before COVID hit. On the whole thing. I couldn't reiterate enough. It was easy thing. It's an easy thing to do and talk about, but when you come to it and you've got it in black and white, it's down to you to make sure you've organised it properly, because the tour book is the Bible. No one can change that. No one can change it from when it's set in stone. So therefore, the more you stick to it, the better you become. You know, the more efficiently the tour will go. Jumping back a little bit from that, I did also learn quite quickly that through a number of horror stories about the fact that people going out for 50 quid a day in a van and picking up vans and taking them to Germany or what have you, I realised that it was very, very important, almost totally paramount, that you needed to be sure that you had everything in good stead with your insurance and your cover, and make sure that you do everything properly and all above board, because any cost cutting and it just leads to mayhem and hell, and no one wants that at all. So anyway, I have been doing that obviously since sort of the late 90s, and I've just progressed over the years doing the touring side of it. But coming to front of house with bands that I work with that are from the States and a couple in the UK, it can become, you need to sort of ascertain the two sides of being a tour manager and a touring engineer, or just a driver. Now the problem there is that if you're a driver and you've got a long tour and you've got a lot of driving to do, you don't really want to be managing or doing front of house. You can either want to be doing one or the other. It's a lot of people say, "Oh, why do we need a tour manager if we've got you?" Or why do we need a front of house engineer if we've got you? Well, if I've driven 6 hours, which I don't often, I usually can only do 3 hours and then have a break and then another 3 hours or whatever. But the reason is because there's so much going on in your head, and if you end up frying yourself and you burn yourself out on the third day in, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's not healthy for me. It's not healthy for the safety of the band in the van. However, I do love doing front of house sound. It's usually most venues that I work at now in England and across Europe have all got their own in-house engineers, in-house crew who set it all up. You send them all the information from the tour book, the stage plan, and they have it all ready and waiting for you when you get there. Again, there are ones, the smaller bands that I work with, that don't have that, so you literally are going to a blank canvas, which I actually find a little bit more interesting, really, because it wasn't there in the first place. So if I've got a situation where it's just a workingman's club and it's all seated, I first thing I say is that what's the sort of age of the people who are going to be going to this gig, and then are they going to need to be seated, or you know what I mean? So you have to sort of set that scene as you go. It does make good sense to sort of do your research and make sure you've got everything to hand, everything under under your cap, as it were, because nasty surprises just don't go down very well, and there's always somebody to blame, usually management. But I mean, again, management don't. They're not always in the van. They're not always on the road with you, so they don't really know. They just know what the A to B. They know what the venues are, and that's it. Excuse me. Sorry. So anyway, that brings me along to the management side of things. With management, you tend to get tour managers and band managers, and they are two totally different breeds. Band managers are doing everything for the interest of the band. They manage the band in the respect that they're trying to make as much money for themselves and the band as they possibly can. And the tour manager is purely a manager that deals with the tour and the comfort and happiness of the band. If you don't get on well with a band manager, then it's not a good thing, really, because ultimately they are the ones that employ you. If you have a good understanding with the management, then they're on to another job, the next tour they're going to do. And if you've got a band that does 4 tours, you can easily lose 3 of those tours if you choose off the management at the time. So being nice is always a good thing. I like to think I am nice on those fronts. I mean, they've kept coming back to me, so that must be doing something right. Yeah, I'm just having a look at my notes here. Yeah, so building a client base is the paramount thing, really. I think if I took on any more clients, I would have a problem then with letting people down. I don't like letting people down. So obviously, with the COVID scenario in March, I was just about to go on a big tour, and it was going to earn me good money and earn the band potentially good money, and it all went by the wayside. I sort of kicked myself in a way that I'm not the sort of person that asks for deposits. A lot of people do ask for deposits because of eventualities such as, I don't know, the band split up or something like that. And if you put all your eggs in one basket, as I say, and you say, I've got this tour coming up and then that tour coming up, and you don't make provisions for anything to go wrong, you end up not being able to work, basically, and you spend most of your time worrying then where the next work job's going to come in. Fortunately for me, when COVID hit and I realised that I wasn't going to get anything, any work at all, I went back to on the tools, as it were, and I went back to doing refrigeration service work for a very good friend of mine on a subcontract basis, and I was able to earn. And I'm glad that I took, that I had this as a backup. A lot of musicians didn't, so they consequently were just stuck at home, or they were, they would perhaps get with the MU. The MU have been really, really good, musicians union. They've been really, really good with a lot of musicians where they've been helping them out, trying to get funding for them. But it's just not, it's not the same as bringing in your weekly gig wage. It just doesn't quite cut it, and a lot of people are going pretty quickly about it. I've been, like I say, I'm blessed with the fact that my parents did send me away to get me, to learn another trade other than bass playing and singing and trying to live the dream. I'm looking forward to getting back into it. It's something that I absolutely adore. My wife's a drummer, Donna, and she is in a couple of bands, and I adore touring with her, especially because it's just both of us living our absolute dream as well as earning money from it. So it will happen again. I'm very, very confident. At the moment, the van is a service vehicle, a rather posh service vehicle. I don't know if you can see around it, but it's got all the mod cons, which is important for my clients because they do a lot of miles, and they want to be comfortable when they get out the van, into the venue. They want to be nice and comfy. So I've got games console, I've got TVs, obviously, and air conditioning, leather seats, all the mod cons. And since I think it's 2008, I actually got a good internet connection in the van, so they were able to use the internet, and that keeps them quiet. So it's just keeping everybody happy, making sure they have a good experience on the road. Let me just have a look here. I'm just looking at my notes. I wrote down. Yes, tour management and life on the road is very, very competitive. As I touched earlier on the fact that getting yourself insured and making sure you've got a lot of lot of support from your community to which you're working in. There are horror stories that I've heard from where bands have been picked up by somebody that's charging them £50 a day, man in a van, and they're taking them to Germany and everything. The bottom line is that yes, you can pay for that, and yes, you're very lucky if you get there in one piece, and if you don't, you've got, the band's health and well-being is not the priority of the person who's doing it for peanuts. Thankfully, that used to happen a lot, but it doesn't so much now. Although Matt Snowball have moved over to Belgium, I think, but basically, there are a few companies like Bands for Bands and Mark Sabin, Touring Transport. They've sort of got this section of clients and they offer really, really good services, and it's all really, really well thought of. They don't let drivers drive more than they should do. There's a very, very strict regime with the driving hours of sleeper bus drivers. It's something you need to be, if you want to get into this sort of business, you need to be really, really, really hot on, because no one wants to have a driver fall asleep with 6 guys in the back, or 6 guys and girls in the back of the van or the coach or whatever. So that's something you've got to note. It's really important. Let me have a look here. I've got something there. I've also been very lucky in the fact that back in '87, when I left school, a friend of mine that was at college when I was doing the refrigeration course said, "I see you live on a farm," and I said, "Yeah." And you got any barns? And I said, "Oh yeah, we got a couple of barns." And he was a guitarist, and he said, "Do you reckon we could build a studio at the farm?" And I said, "Yeah, why not? That'd be good. Yeah, that'd be quite cool." So we turfed out a load of chickens out of one of the barns. It was a stable block, and I spent about a year making our own rehearsal studio mainly. It was not nothing more than that, and it was called Rook's Nest Studio, and we used to rehearse in there day in, day out, whenever we had moments spare. This is all before my touring, but that studio has always been my bit of a lifeline. I've always been able to go out to it, and I was living with my parents at the time. I always used to be able to go out there and play the piano and just chill out and just enjoy playing, creating music in it. It was very, very basic. The building work wasn't very, very good, and it needed some sort. It was just like a man cave, really. Well, now that studio again is it's been a lifeline, really, because in there I repair amplifiers for bands, guitar amps and bass amps and keyboards and such like in the studio, and we have it quite often open for videos and conferencing and things like that. Now, just recently, obviously, because of COVID, we've had to extend it for safe distancing. And it's all looking pretty cool and posh in there now, but it's not finished. So we are trying our best. But if you ever need anything repairing or anything, things like that, or rehearsal space, although I believe that Lounge Bar do free rehearsal space, so you need to go there first. Yeah, the studio has obviously been giving me a bit of a lifeline whilst I haven't been out on tour, because bands, according to the Musicians Union, bands are allowed to, if they're doing rehearsing for money, so i.e. they're doing it professionally, then they are allowed to go into studios and rehearse, and so a producer's allowed to go into the studios and use the studios for producing. I believe that's the rule at the moment. Yeah, I mean that's something that just kept me busy, along with doing service calls and what have you for refrigeration, air conditioning, whilst I've not been able to do any touring. It is good to have your finger in lots of different pies. If you could imagine, if you're the word I created earlier on about being a tour tech, or that sort of expression, not more than just a driver. if I go out with a new band and they have a guitar lead break or they have a string snap or whatever, rather than them being having to employ a stage tech or a guitar tech or whatever you, if I'm available, if I'm there, if I'm side the stage, and there's a different, there's a venue doing front of house, I can repair these things on site there and then. So when we're going abroad a lot, and a lot of the time I've got full kit in the van that I can pull out and I can repair things and fix them. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, it's quite a good bonus to have, because I know for sure that a few of my clients have sort of said they do that because they know that they can come to me if anything goes wrong on the road. And I sort of like take a bit of pride in that. The thing I'm no good at fixing horns or woodwind instruments, anything like that. I can't do that, but I can fix anything that's electrical. I don't know if there are any questions. I can't see. I've got rid of my thingamajig there. No, I don't think you've got it. If you do have any questions, please. I don't think it is working. I can see it down to the right-hand side of my screen, but I can't. I don't think there are any questions there. I'm not offended. Don't worry about it. I can talk the high leg of the continent, apparently. So going back to the fact that of having all your fingers in one pie, you can, in many different pies, you need to have this ability to, in my experience anyway, I mean, if it doesn't interest you, then obviously don't do it. But I mean, if you feel that you want to stay in the business, you've got to be sort of open to be able to be a jack of all trades, and not necessarily a master of none, but a jack of all trades at least, and somebody who's very approachable. So you're going in there as a team. And there's one band, and I'm not going to mention band names because I don't really like name dropping. Apart from Jamie Lennon, of course, who's a great guy to work for, a lovely chap, and as Carl said, what a musician, what a guy, what a top bloke. Anyway, there's a band that I work for that I was doing a gig in Germany, and they had a Hammond Leslie pack up behind them on stage mid-show, and I managed to go in there and repair it between songs and then wheel it back on the stage, not being seen either. I managed to get it behind the curtain, fix it from behind the curtain. Just doing basic soldering work, I've got the soldering on underneath the seat here, and I just went in there, rushed in there and did it all, and it's a bit of a buzz for me. But like I say, if you're not into that sort of thing, then don't worry, it's not really a major disaster if you don't. However, I do remember when I did my lecturing in West London University, there was very clear border between people that wanted to learn about band management, which I didn't really. I mean, I didn't really. I'm more sort of tour management rather than band management. I suppose it is band management because you're managing a lot of people and you've got to guide them in the right direction. But they weren't really interested in what a guitarist would think about his guitar, or what a drummer would think about the skins on a drum kit, or do you know what I mean, or tone of the drums, or tone of the guitar, or whatever. Whereas I have a very much a keen interest in that, because I sort of think, well, I'm not just, don't just listen to music. I play music, and because I play music, I have a sort of idea of how it's created. So if you're a musician, and you want to get into the tour management side of it, or the touring side of it, it does help sort of have this sort of respect for, or this sort of understanding of other people's instruments, not just your own. Not sounding too harsh about it. Yes, the cup of tea is going cold now. So let me just have a look at my notes, see what I've missed out on. Blimey, I've gone way ahead of myself. God, dear, oh dear. So I need some questions if anyone's got any. Oh yeah, I will tell you a bit more about my van. I can't move the camera around because I broke the laptop camera and I haven't had time to fix it yet. So I've got a little fixed camera at the moment in the back of the van. The reason why I'm doing this in the back of the van is because we've got a band in at the moment rehearsing. So it's a bit chaotic in there, and half of it's still a building site, and the other half is it's just the control room. So the van I bought brand new in quite a few years ago now, and actually 2008 I bought the van, and it's done nearly 300,000 miles. All of those miles are with me and me driving and bands in the back, and it's it's a very trusty steed. Love it to bits, and it'll be a very sad day when it goes through the tire. I'm sure it'll make somebody a lovely little motorhome. Why didn't you have it for myself? Donna and I can go camping off into the woods somewhere every summer. But yeah, that's also another thing. If you've got a vehicle that's your own, you've got to keep it well up to scratch, because we've got, I've been servicing this religiously, but every time I go away on a tour, I'll give it a service, and every time that it says on the thing it needs a service, I'll give it another service. So it's well and truly looked after. And if you look after your van, then your van will look after you. Simple as that. No, it's all buts about it. I must admit, I don't know whether I would really invest in getting another van and buying it myself, because I'm thinking things changing so rapidly with the electric vehicle scenario and the cost of things, the price, and I was it did break me, trying to pay for it, but again, it's all mine, and I paid for it. It's all done and dusted. But it's certainly a good idea to hire, because usually then the hire vans are relatively new, 1 or 2 years old, and they are they're very well equipped. They have everything in them that this has got. I wouldn't say more, but they have everything in them that you need for a good tour. Some of them have sleeper sections in them, which are good. And financially, it's probably a better way of keeping it, of staying on the road without it costing you too much, because the insurance for this to carry people is around about £3,000 a year. That's because I'm carrying bands and equipment, and I want to make sure that it's all covered very, very adequately. Let's have a look here. You can see I've said about the tour book and the Bible, which is very, very good. You've got going to the front of house side of things. When I've ever done front of house, I do. A couple of the bands I work with have got their own front of house engineers, which is great. And I've never had to pull in anything other than total respect for what they do, because it's really quite hard work, because you've got a million people with somebody who likes the sound of one thing and somebody doesn't like the sound of the other thing. In fact, I've got a very good friend who went into lighting because he said he was sick and tired of people telling him there's too much bass and not enough vocals and what have you. So he went into lighting, and bless him, and then we would mock him by saying there was far too much pink in that, it was far too much red in that, So you've got with the tour management and the Bible, the tour, the Bible, tour Bible, you've got all that information in there, and you can show profiles up in it. So if you've done your research in the first place, you're able to then refer back to it, or you think ahead. So you can say you can contact the venue and say to the venue, we need this, we need that, we need, if you haven't already got it. And again, I always carry set mics with me that I like, that are good live mics, and I always carry spares of everything. So I have spare bass strings, spare guitar strings, spare sticks, sometimes spare drum skins, but not often. It's only if I'm working with the wife that I take spare drum skins. And we it does work quite well in my business. Hang on a second. How do you assess the needs of different rooms from the same sound every night? Well, you usually do that by setting up and just basically going, obviously with the band getting ready in the green room. You do a sound check. So you basically listen to the room and you ping it out, make sure you've got I usually have some good old-fashioned classic 80s hits that I whack on the desk and wind up and see what the sound is like in the room, and then you can sort of compensate and take a bit out here and there and everywhere. But most of the time with the pro venues that are already set and they've got everything there, the house is usually tuned really well. The PA is really tuned really well to the house. Not often do you get a lot of boomy noises or anything like that, but if you do, you can obviously attack them as and when you do it. That's why you just need the sound check on the beginning when you get there, and you get the band so they get settled in and give them a good sound check. Sound checks can go on for hours. Usually the bigger the band, i.e. the more members in the band, the longer the sound check. But they don't tend to go any more than about an hour and a half, 2 hours before. Because again, if you've got a band that has a support band coming in, the support need to have exactly the same treatment, even if they're using the front of house, the in-house engineers, because the in-house engineers don't know what the band sounds like. And in fact, it does often. It's often the case where the in-house engineers, there's a lot of really good venues in Germany where they do their research to the band way before the band get there, even the support band. So they know exactly what effects they use. They know what they know the songs. They know the dynamics of the song. So the sound and the lighting guys or girls, they are on it really, really, really quickly, which is great. It's so much easier, and it just makes such a good gig. And the trick is to have a good gig at the end of the day. Then everybody's happy and they're doing what they came out to do, and they're making it a success. The rooms that we tend to, I mean, there is one room that I've been back to a few times, the Shepherd's Bush Empire, which is great venue, but it's got quite a harsh front house sound. And if you've got, thankfully, I've not been in a situation where there have been no punters turning up because I think it's like 3,000 capacity. But when I've gone there and we've done a sound check and the room's empty, it's very, very, very different from the room when it's full. So it completely changes. So you've got to be on the ball. You've got to be able to pull that out quickly. Because if you don't, you are going to get those complaints, which is horrible. It's horrible. I've only ever had it happen to me once, and so and then. But saying that, I'm not saying I'm brilliant at it, but I've only ever had it happen where I've actually thought, I really can't believe what you just said, when they say, could you turn it down a bit? I can't hear myself talk. And you sort of think, well, really? And you shouldn't be talking. You shouldn't be here. Go somewhere else. But I mean, I'm not nasty. I'm nice, but I don't. I just giggle and say, okay. Course technique, do the actions, make it look like you're turning it down, and they go, yeah, thank you for that. You go, yeah, of course, well done. Have I got any other questions? Is there any? Do you want to hear some horror stories? You don't want to hear any horror stories. I've had in the past some really fun times where they have been so scary, in respect where I've lost a drummer, or I've lost a bass player, or I've lost a guitarist, or somebody's overslept and we can't get in, and things like that. And it's again, this is the whole part and parcel of it. In more recent years, it's been quite quiet, and it's been more better constructive. But it's yes, it's I have had bitten my nails down to the quick, worrying about getting someone to the gig on time, and because ultimately it is down to you, as a driver, as a tour manager, as anyone who's sort of giving their life and soul to it and making sure that it's really happening well. Then you've got that, you have got that responsibility. I don't know. I mean, I think that with a lot of band members, especially the younger the band members are, the more excitable they are. They want to party, and I don't disagree with that. I'm not a grumpy so and so. I won't say no. You can't go out because you've got a gig tomorrow. Blah blah blah. I will usually, if I can, I will advise them on the best places to go and the best places to avoid. And if I feel that they're not going to get back in one piece, then I'll usually drive them, usually take them out, and they'll be in the van. And I'll say, right, you've got to be here. You've got to, I'm going to pick you up at 3 a.m. in the morning. But then, of course, we have that's a mutual respect on that, because they know that I'm going to be driving. So we look at the tour book, the Bible, and we say, right, we've got to be at this venue at 3 p.m. and this is how many miles it is to the venue. So I'm going to need my sleep, and I'm going to need to be in bed by such and such. And generally, the consensus is pretty clear. They stick to it. So they make sure that they're in, regardless of what state they're in. They're in, and they're back, ready for the travel the next day. Nowadays, beforehand, I mean, about sort of 10 years ago, they would, if you did a gig, you've always got paid on the night, cash on the night. But just more recently, it's all done by bank transfer. So the only sort of cash the band are sort of left with, but it's usually left to the tour manager, because it's the safest place for it to be. It's from merch sales, and merch sales is extremely important. The most important thing, I think, whilst on the road, because a lot of bands live that. So if they work it out, merch sales, only because it means that by the end of the tour, the management, you haven't got lots of bills to pay. They've just got lots of receipts to collect. And you don't go mad on it. Obviously, it's not extravagant. Although I had one band that was really cool, because I loved it, because they would always have a massive eat out, and just a celebration. If it was a good gig and it was good merch sales, they'd go, let's go and have a nice big meal and what have you, which was great. It was a good pat on the back for everybody involved. And also, they would take out the crew. Usually, if the crew were available or around, they would they would take the crew out, which is really good. It's good for morale, because every time that band comes back, again, every time the band comes back to the UK, if it's an American band or or an international band, then they're going to remember that. The crew are going to remember that, and everybody from from security staff to the actual venue are going to remember that band. And say, right, yeah, let's make an even better one this time. And there are a lot of beautiful venues out there, and also there are a few that we've lost sadly, just recent. So we've got to definitely keep an eye on this whole supporting the venues and getting them getting them through this, because I think that we are looking at next spring or late spring. So the venues are still there. Do you know what I mean? They're trying their best to sort of find a way around it, but it's tough. It's really tough. It's something you'd none of us could have ever predicted. I think that also the idea of saying that the musicians have got to try and find other vocations in life. It's just ridiculous, because there's so many people that love it so much. For goodness sake, it's the biggest export from the UK. Music, so we've got to make sure that we keep it up and running. Have I got any questions? No, I haven't got any questions. But no, I think I'll just keep going. So again, the whole thing is with being out on the road and being with a band is that they are essentially your family for the 2 weeks that they're with you, or even if it's a short tour, you gotta be in the position to take the rough with the smooth. If they're feeling bad, and give them a wide berth, and make sure that they've got their own space. And if they're feeling good, and you feel good along with them. I think that a lot of people sort of have this really weird expectation that touring engineers or touring bands do nothing but, and have no other sort of purpose in life other than to do that. But I think that basically it's people that are so passionate about their music and about their lives that they want to express that to everybody. I was basically, when I still play bass now, and we've had gigs that have been set up and we've had to not do them obviously because of COVID, but I mean, I still go out there and do, and it's just like if we're playing to one man and his dog, it's still the same as me. I'm still happy that I've done it and I've set it all up, and that it's not about the money necessarily. It's about enjoyment and about quality of life, I think. So it's not as though we're any different from actors and West End showmen, men and women. It's just that we bounce from one place to another, one place to another, one place to another, and write new songs and do new things. There are, again, there's this whole persona that it's not a real job, that musicians aren't in the real, they're not, they should be doing stuff other than music, but it is a real job. It's something you love, and you've got to enjoy what you do for a living, whether you are a bricklayer or carpenter or a musician. You've got to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, don't do it. If it's not giving you that fulfillment, don't do it. I miss it desperately, and I think that most people that I know that are in the industry miss it. Let's hope it comes back soon. I'm just having a look at my notes. I don't think I've. I don't know how this works when I'm still on the picture. I mean, going back to the studio, Mayfair. It's basically we've just. I reckon we got about another week or two work to be done there. And we're going to be doing rehearsal stuff, and live streaming from it of gigs, because we've made it so wide now, so big. It's like a stage, and the cameras get everybody, and they're all safe distance, and it's all going to be live streamed. The idea was purely brought up because we decided It was my friends in the States, actually. They did it. They started doing it, and we've seen through the first lockdown so many people doing online streaming. And I think it's tragic also that, you know, not more people sort of show a little bit more respect that it needs, because, you know, there have been a few people that I've done that have put on some brilliant shows, and they've not asked for any funding, and they've not got any. They've not had much response, which is quite sad, really, because I think that they are obviously trying to change their keep yourself going. There's one thing in the studios, what studios are doing that, but all the way around the studio, but covering the room with the there, and we did it. I disappeared. I don't know if yeah. Oh, I've got another question. Yes. Would I recommend forward training for learning this job? Oh, so I've got a buzzing going on. Oh, that's like my phone. It's my factory. It's all right. I'll unpack it. Is it stop? Yeah, that's it. Okay. Yeah. So the formal training. Yeah, I mean, I think that really, I'm a great believer of being thrown from the from the fire and into the fire. I think you can have a lot of training, certainly with the electronic side of it, maybe. But I think that if you're doing tour stuff, then I think it's good to jump on the back of a tour. If you can. A lot of people that are interested in this are musicians, right? So you can go on a tour, or you can get involved with it. Come and speak to me, and I'll see if I'll take you on tour with me or whatever. But you can get involved with a tour as long as there's a seat there for you, and you very little paid. You get your food paid for, whatever, and you get to see what it's like and if it's good for you. Because I think that if the training is, if you go there, if you go to college and you train about all the things that with tour management, you can learn the academics and make sure that you've got it all under the tour Bible, very much so. But when it comes to the physical stuff and whether you can actually cope with it, it's good to try and jump onto a tour or be part of a setup of a tour yourself. But yeah, I mean, there are benefits to both sides, really. I think it's sort of being able to sort of split the two, make it, not think that you can just train up on it and then go out and do it, because it is quite difficult. I mean, the only way that I did it was purely by testing it myself and making sure that making sure that I did it right. And I mean, I'm still learning every time I go out on tours, Some of them, I mean, there's one client I work for, I'm not mentioning his names, but he came over and he said, "You work for me now, boy." And I was sort of thinking, right, okay. And he said, "First things first, we all get breakfast, and it's on you." And I was thinking, it's not really how we do it here over here, but okay, let's see how it goes. And I went back to management and said, "But he wants this, he wants this, he wants that." And they said, "Oh yeah, he will try it. He will try it on with you, and he will get what he can out of you." So it's it's really it's a real tricky one, that, because you've got a situation where you've still got to adapt and you've still got to make the client very happy and comfortable, but also there are certain limits, and you do learn that only on the road. You can't actually learn that in the classroom. However, again, you can learn to solder. You can learn to, I mean, even my daughter, I think, learned to solder at school, but you can learn to solder. You can learn how leads work, how microphones work, how guitars are wired, how basses are wired, whatever else, PAs, a lot. So
if you've got that small, even that small amount of knowledge, it's worth £1 million to the people that are that you're working with, especially if they don't. I think that again, you've got to be able to explain stuff to people if they are interested in doing it, interested in hearing it. A lot of musicians, I think, not in a bad way, but they're far too. They've got so much going on in their heads musically that they don't care that they do care, but they don't want to really know about how their guitar works. They just want it to work. That's fair enough. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And then you get, but that's where you have a technical rider. You have the technical rider comes with in the book, in the tour Bible, and you can look at that and refer to that, which is good news. Do I have any more questions? I've got one from my wife saying there's a weird buzzing going on. Yes, I saw that. No, let me just see. I'm just trying to look right in between my notes there. Hang on. Yes. Oh, I've got down here how to make a tour book and with the handy hints, etc. to learn. Basically, the tour book is something that sits on the scene next to you, and wherever you go. And even if you're doing like a 3-day tour, it's good to have it because that book has got everything in it. It's literally got the obviously the name of the venue, the address, the capacity of the venue, the PA that's in the venue, the how many tickets. Usually, by the time you're well, no, not usually. Actually, you usually have to contact them because if you're on a long tour, then the ticket sales can change between depending on how far into the tour you're at. But you can certainly, you have a good idea of what the capacity is and whether you're going to half fill it or fill it, or what have you. And it will have in it, like I said earlier, a technical rider which will give you basic stage setup and where everything's got to be, where the wedges have got to be positioned, where the bass amp, guitar amp, or any side fills or anything like that have got to be all put in, drum kit set up, etc., etc. I've got a bit of a problem because my battery's going flat, and I can't understand why it's buzzing when I plug it in. If you give me a couple of minutes, I'll go and plug another power supply in. Is that all right? I'm just gonna... Yay! I'm back in the room. There you are. There's another situation there, which is really, really paramount. I am in the van, obviously outside the studio, and I'm running off the van's power supply, which has an inverter. Now, if you've got a van that you're on tour with, or a band that you're on tour with, and they've got an inverter in the van, which they will have, that buzzing is an earth leakage loop. So it's basically where we've got, I can't turn the camera around to show you, but basically you've got this little box unit that converts the 12 volts of the van to 240 volts. If the inverter you bought for the van is slightly on the cheap side, and it wasn't cheap by any stretch of the imagination, but it's quite old now. It's done a lot of miles with the van. It will develop this slight buzz, and it's just where it can't learn itself. Anyway, I'm going to go back to what I was talking about before. I can give you lessons on that. That's not a problem. Just contact me on the mayfairstudio.com, and I will. If you have any questions like that, within why is that doing this in my van? I love doing stuff. I love talking to people about stuff like that. It's a bit like being a train spotting, but it's not. Well, there's my phone. Going back to live sound, I was just thinking about that. The comment about checking out a room and getting the best out of a room when you're doing sound. If you can learn about this sort of thing by generally, going on YouTube and looking up, people's different ways of doing it. But basically, you've got to rely and trust your ears, because if you have a room that's particularly harsh, as you get on in life with it, listening to different rooms, you can find ways of being able to EQ that room out and making changes to that. So it's always good to have whatever songs you think have the most of everything in them. So the most frequencies that are likely to be flying around in a room, and you're checking out the PA, you're checking out the room sound, and the song you're putting on is just a test. You wind it up on the PA, so you've got every type of frequency that could be pinging around in the room at whatever circumstance. Same with the monitoring side of it. If you go onto stage and you've got the band on stage, depending on where they're positioned, they can bounce stuff off them. If they've got if they've got floor monitors rather than in-ear monitors, they can basically change every step of the way. So you've got to know how to tackle that. The only way you can do that is by testing it yourself and getting it right yourself. It took quite a while for me to get around that, because I always thought it was quite simple, just mic them up and plug and play, and it's not. It's more like being a musician yourself, because you've got to identify the frequency that's giving the problem, and then you've got to tackle that frequency. There is a thing called spectrum analyzer, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, and if you're a musician, you probably would have heard of it too. And that will basically sit there and it will give you a reading of the frequencies that are flying around in a particular room or in a particular area that it is picking up. So if you have the spectrum analyzer at the back of the room by the front of house desk or board, it will be picking up frequencies that are around that immediate area. So if you get a little bit of a pinging noise, a bit of feedback going on stage, you need to be on stage for that. So you bring your spectrum analyzer on stage, it will come up with the frequency that's giving you the grief, and you just pull that down within the graphic EQ. It's very, very simple. I've got these boards that I use all the time, and it's my trusty old X32. I know people hate them. People say, oh, Behringers, blah, 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 but no, I run X32, I've got M32, and they're both equally as good. The M32 is a bit quicker because it's got better pots on it, but then it's more expensive. That's the bottom line. But the X32 is just as good at doing the same thing. They're just computers at the end of the day. Because I'm an old school sound engineer, I prefer to use gear that's got proper knobs on it, proper dials on it, that's heavy and everything. It's in the house, but that is dying away. It's moving away from that now. Everything's going digital. There's nothing wrong with going digital. Nothing wrong with that at all. However, I still believe that it's nice to have copper to copper and actual, rather than virtual, to have actual physical things, because virtually it can, like my laptop, put 99% charge, then bam, it's down 26, 25, 24, 23, and I'm sitting here and oh my god, the battery's going flat. So yeah, it's very, very, it is an art within itself doing front of house sound. I'm not saying I'm not bigging up, not saying that I'm the best in the world. I'm certainly not the best, but I have over the years been able to have the ability to, when I meet a band and I'm with a band, I do, if I haven't worked with a band before, I do my research, see what they like, see what sort of sound they have, see what sort of vibe they have, and then I can, as front of house engineer or TM, I can say to the lighting guy or girl, they want a bit of this, a bit of that, and then equally sometimes the band on the riders, they'll say no strobes, no smoke, no this, no audience lights or no whiteouts, and you've got it's in your job as a tour manager or tour tech, as I call myself, you to make sure that's put forward each time, every gig, because if you don't, they look at you for as to why it's happened, and then you sort of think, Oops. But generally, if it's on the rider, good venues will have they'll have all the information there. If any of you got any questions about that, then please do get in touch and let me know. I'm just going to see what else I've got here. I did write some more notes. Going back to the tour book side of things, it is good to learn on how to make them. There's lots of stuff online, and if you come in with a good tour book, I had to, like I say, when I did the West London thing, I had to sort of get the students to construct their own tour book. Well, they came up with really good. They did loads of research, and they came up with some really good stuff. Stuff that's better than that I've seen for a long time, in as far as detailed analysis of what each band member wanted to eat, what they couldn't eat, whether religions, everything like that, and it was very, very interesting to see, that sort of information brought in front of you as somebody who's in charge of a lot of people like that. You've got not the upper hand, but you've got the advantage of being able to make sure that it's a smooth ride. Again, the other thing works on the fact that if you are doing front of house sound, what the people on stage, if you're doing monitoring as well, which I don't hate, but I don't. You'll speak to a lot of front of house engineers that would much rather on stage monitoring guy does it rather than them, because they're not up there. You're not up there. If you're behind the desk in front of house, it may sound great up here, but on stage, the poor band might be just like surrounded in a mush of just noise, whereas on stage, monitoring engineer will be able to tackle that without any problems out front. I've got another question here. What is the minimum you would recommend for people to own in order to offer certain microphones? Definitely the key. If you've got microphones, they've got to be tried and tested. There are a lot of microphones out there in the market. Shure, obviously, are one of them. AKG, Sennheiser. I use Sontronics. They're great mics, and they're good, very well priced, and they've won lots of awards recently. Their kick drums mics are a bit too big and bulky, but they're working on that. But you have the Beta 91 for that anyway. And the AKG stuff's brilliant. It's good to have an array of really good drum mics and guitar amp mics, and a couple of vocal mics. You don't always use them. More often than not, I'm out on the road, and when I'm out on the road, I will only get them out if I'm doing the working man type club gigs where I've got to set everything up, set PA up and everything. 9 times out of 10, all the venues will have exactly what you asked for. So if you want 57s across the whole kit, they'll put 57s across the whole kit. It's not a problem. But if you're going to go out on the road or go out and put yourself out as a sound engineer of any shape of the imagination, you've got to make sure you've got a good set of headphones, even if they're in-ears. The in-ears aren't the best because they're not a representation of the room. That's why I always keep one in, one out. But you've got a good set of headphones, you've got a good set of mics, you've got a lot of the old school people, and I know they'll be cringing when I say this, but they don't agree with spectrum analyzers because they say it's laziness, but it's quick. In this digital world now, if you can't remember because you're getting old, like I am, the frequencies, the numbers of frequencies and where they should be at the drop of a hat in a snap, which is how quick a feedback or a ping or a bang makes, you have an analyzer there and you see it, and it'll lock to that frequency that's affected. I think they're great. I think they are absolute godsend, really. something Google did right. You know, I'm just trying to see if I can find one on here, but I don't think my camera probably won't pick it up anyway. But yeah, it's just basically a spectrum analyzer. You can get on the phone. Most of the phones and iPads now have such good microphones on them. They barely miss a thing as far as audio analysis is concerned. But ultimately, it's these up here that are your biggest and your most effective tool. Your ears. If it sounds good, it's great. That's brilliant. If it sounds shit, then it probably is, and a lot of people will agree with you on that. I think that you've you've got to be very, very confident and putting out that track at the beginning of it. There's a brilliant track by, no, I can't remember the name of the band. It's called All That Medicine. I think it's called Tax the Heat. A band called Tax the Heat. There's a brilliant track there called All That Medicine. And it's got every frequency you could ever possibly want as a live front of house sound engineer. Tell it, it's spot on. I love it a bit. And another one is it's a Bob Marley one, Three Little Birds. Great song, great frequencies, wide range, and that puts a PA through its paces. There's very few PAs now that out there at venues that are rubbish or that can't deal with the wide range of frequencies, because the venues will get a name very, very quickly, a poor name if they have bad gear, and the bands won't come back to it. So I think that if you've got the track, there's some test tracks you can put through the PA when you get there, when you turn up, and when it's safe to do so, and you're allowed to make some noise. Do that, and obviously microphones and also show files are great. If you are on a long tour and you can pretty much you can't demand it, but most of the time, most venues will have the same board, the same desk. So you can get show files for those desks, and everything's set up as far as the stage is concerned and monitoring. But then you just have to tune it to the house. And as I say, usually the front of house engineers will have done that anyway by the time you get there. So they would know what the EQ of the house is going to be like, or whether it's good or bad or ugly. It's a great venue in Fleet, the Harlington, that they've just had. Nick is in working in, and he's set up the line arrays beautifully. He's just done it. The equalisation of that room. It was. I went there a few years ago, and it was hell. Really, it was quite hard to get my head around it. It was, and it was always something you were worried about going to and working, because you knew that somebody would come up and be moaning about something. But Nick has he's set that up really, really well. It's fantastic room there, fantastic sound, great stage, great lighting, great people, great crew. And I think that's worth £1 million when it comes to successfully being out there on the road. Again, the other thing is that, of course, if you're doing shows and the equipment's really that bad, it makes no difference if you sit there and say it's bad and you say, "Oh, I'm not going to do this. I can't work with this." You've got to work with it. You've got to make it. You've got to get around it somehow. I did a gig a few years ago where I had an inkling that there was a power problem at this venue, because it had been flooded or quite recently before, and I knew something was not quite right. And luckily, I took some backup stuff, and the band I was with said, why have you got this extra? Why have you got this blah blah? Why have you got this extra sample power this and power that, and not that rack? And why is this? This is taking up more space. And I said, I've just got a bit of a bad feeling about this. And anyway, sure as eggs are eggs, there was a power issue down there, and it knocked out one of my power amps that I I had there. And I had to basically run it from the van. So I had to run the PA at one side of the PA from the van because there's just not power sufficient there to run it. And it was just making my system shut down. There's a lot of very good safety circuits on equipment nowadays to stop people getting electrocuted and to ensure that you're not driving it too hard and you're not thrashing it. But the problem on the flip side of that is that if you have a full power supply going to the system, it's not going to help. Again, that's the same with guitar buzzing on earth leakages on stage. Dimmer packs, the old school dimmer packs, the big PAR, not the LED ones, the big PAR 64s. They have a dimmer pack that's basically a bunch of coils sat in a box, and you've got to know that the dimmer packs are one that they still use them a lot in Germany. Well, even in the States, in fact, they are beautiful light. The colour of the light is fantastic. It's beautiful. So it's really hard to sort of get away from that. But in theatre it's fine because you don't have guitar amps in theatres unless you have Rocky or something like that. But yeah, dimmer pack. If you've got a dimmer pack anywhere on the stage, it's a box full of coils that has high resistance. With the lighting engineer is turning it, making the lights bright and dark, or changing different colour scenes, or what have you, and they'll buzz and they'll give a guitar amp a nasty buzz, especially if it's a vintage guitar amp, an old valve amp or something, and the valves are pulling in that buzzing. Oh, it's terrible. No way you get around it. Absolutely no way you get around it. Thankfully, going back to that, though, I did actually, I won't talk about that, but basically, it was when my inverter in the van was much younger, so it didn't buzz. Just so you know, because at the moment we're plugged into the studio power supply, so it should be buzzing now. These are things you can pick up on the road. I never knew that when I started. I never knew that there was such a thing as a dimmer pack, and the dimmer pack can make or break a show. It can make a show by being an advanced beautiful piece of old school equipment, which gives beautiful light, which makes the production look fantastic. But it doesn't necessarily make the new modern digital amplifiers and digital boards and digital snakes work better. They don't like it at all. They will buzz the cows come home, unfortunately. So if you ever do get a buzz, check for a dimmer pack on stage. That will be more likely the situation. But most venues now have gone over to LED. So then all the cameramen have to worry about is the fact that the LED is not flickering in their lens when they're taking the picture. I'm trying to think of the other things that are really paramount with it. Obviously in-ear monitoring systems for live music are a godsend, beautiful, because you have no stage noise. No feedback. You sometimes do tend to get guitarists a little bit loud, but if they've got themselves in their ears, they usually will have in-ear monitors that they love, that sound really good to them. So therefore, they'll keep their stage volume tamed. So then you can make sure the sound out front is nice and stable, and can't be sort of overdriven by anyone on stage going out of control because they can't hear themselves. But equally, side fills and on-stage monitors are great. It's how well you're gigged and how well you've been brought up with it. And again, money is another thing. So if you have got that a good system, good monitoring system, you're used to it. It's just paramount. It's such an investment, such a good investment. Some of these in-ear monitors can cost thousands and thousands, but they will last you forever. You won't go deaf, and no mistakes can be made as far as instant feedback or anything like that can happen on stage, and you can have whistling in your ears for the rest of the tour. Which no one really likes, and yet that's another tick down the box of things not to happen, what to do when you're touring. So Yeah, I mean, if you have any other questions you need to answer, I haven't covered, then please do get in touch with me. I'll be going shortly. I've just got to see the band off. I think they're outside looking at me in a strange way, but that's probably because I'm lit up like a snowman in the back of the van. I've got this sort of subtle blue lighting in the hair, and a great big LED light in front of me, so to light up my face. Because when I turn it off, you can barely see me. But it's been great giving you some insight to it. I hope I've given you enough information. But if you don't, if you have any questions that you can't think of now and you want to ask me about later, then please do drop me an email, Rupert at the mayfairstudio.com, and I'll quite happily answer it because that's what I love doing. All right. So yes, and equally, thank you, Catherine, for oh, well, thank you, Catherine, for asking me to come and speak about my years of touring. Do keep up the good work. It's a really, really good thing. I think it's fantastic. I've watched all the others, and they're just all great. And it's nice to see so many positive faces out there. Stay positive, stay focused, and be safe. And I hope to see you on the road sometime soon. Mwah, mwah, mwah.